federal investigation intercepted and a federal vehicle allegedly damaged by demonstrators protesting an ICE raid in Detroit.
Welcome back, everyone, to our deep dive into some real-world law and order issues, touching on that Detroit incident we've all been talking about.
Yes, the chaotic scene unfolding Monday near Livernois and Joy. Now police are launching an investigation. Fox News' Ingrid Kelly with the latest.
People all across the country have been responding to the kidnappings, because that's what they are, of individuals by ICE.
This scene taking place Monday near Joy and Livernois, where ICE officials say they were there to arrest an illegal alien from Honduras who had been removed from the U.S. twice. In fact, officials say the man fled ICE officers earlier that morning.
Their neighborhood being surrounded by officers with assault rifles.
As tensions ran high, activists from Detroit People's Assembly described what went down.
Federal agents got tired of waiting and kind of just busted down the door, dragged out one of the family members.
Once outside, activists say the person was put into an unmarked vehicle, which then tried to drive away.
Escape with the detainee through a large grass field.
That's when an independent demonstrator decided to move in.
Hopped in his truck to try to cut off the ICE agents' trucks. He cut off the truck, but there was no actual impact.
Detroit police were already at the scene because the federal agency requested they be there to keep the peace. Detroit police have now launched an investigation after this demonstrator allegedly interfered with the federal investigation.
As an organization, we don't endorse hopping in your cars to go try to cut off federal vehicles as they drive away. But at the same time, this is an expression of folks who are incredibly frustrated.
Detroit police took this demonstrator into custody, and another person was also arrested for malicious destruction of property of a separate federal vehicle. And that's not all. Detroit police then used pepper spray after protesters entered the street and approached a scout car.
We're not endorsing any, radical action as an organization, but at the same time, if people decide to take that on their own, we're not here to condemn them either.
ICE officials released a statement to Fox 2 which reads in part, "It is a crime to obstruct or otherwise interfere with an ICE arrest, and anyone involved may be subject to prosecution under federal law." And as this investigation by Detroit police continues, these activists say their work will continue also.
We as an organization, we as a community will continue to resist the fascist agenda of the Trump administration and their attempts to scapegoat immigrants.
In Detroit, Ingrid Kelly, Fox 2 News.
Welcome back, everyone. Today we're diving into a recent incident from Detroit that really puts the concept of law and order under the microscope.
Yeah, exactly. So what's the scoop?
Well, it starts with ICE. They were doing what they do best. They executed a search warrant on an individual from Honduras, someone who, get this, had been removed from the U.S. twice before, yet somehow managed to reappear. Clearly, there was a repeated disregard for the rules.
Wow, talk about giving too many chances, right?
Right, and then, of course, the outrage brigade jumped in. You got people out there who pull their info from less than reliable sources, and they immediately label the entire operation as something outrageous. But ICE had a solid search warrant.
Exactly.
This wasn't a random grab-and-run job.
But what really gets me is how some critics started shouting kidnapping as soon as the officers moved in.
Yeah, it's almost like a knee-jerk reaction without understanding the legal context. When federal agents are executing a lawful warrant on someone who's repeatedly violated the rules, that's an arrest, not a kidnapping. It simply falls within the bounds of law.
Sure, but don't you think some might argue that ICE operations, because they involve federal might, can sometimes look heavy-handed?
I hear that, but here the legal authority was crystal clear. The individual had been warned, removed before, and then simply didn't get it. Plus, let's not forget, ICE wasn't improvising. They had everything in place legally. It's a case where the law had already been spelled out.
Exactly. And then, in a twist you'd almost think is straight out of a video game, while ICE was trying to move the detainee, independent protesters got in there, cutting off federal vehicles in a grass field.
Oh man, that part really stands out. It's like, imagine trying to stage a real-life Grand Theft Auto. Only instead of arcade characters, you've got actual people playing bumper cars with federal vehicles. Not exactly the best
Yeah.
strategy for civil disobedience.
Right, and then the Detroit police got involved at ICE's request, no less, trying to keep the peace because these protests escalated into real public disturbances.
Exactly. And 2 people, get this, ended up getting arrested. One for essentially turning a federal vehicle situation into a bumper car ride, and the other for malicious destruction of property. It really shows that interfering with law enforcement isn't a harmless act. It's a clear message that the rules apply to everyone.
Yep. I mean, it sends a strong reminder that if you're trying to outsmart the system by just being dramatic, you're actually crossing a line.
Absolutely. And here's another twist. The social justice crowd quickly jumped on the narrative, calling it a kidnapping, even though the legal facts were on display. It's like they were more interested in creating headlines than sticking to the facts.
I totally get that, but I have to ask, isn't it possible that this is partly why some see the system as oppressive because there's this mismatch between actions based on law and the way they're portrayed in the media?
That's a fair point, and I mean, it definitely fuels the divide. But in this case, ICE pointed out quite clearly that interfering with an arrest is, a federal crime.
True.
They left no room for misinterpretation.
Yeah, it almost sounds like they're saying, do your homework before criticizing.
Exactly. And here's the thing. It wasn't about being heavy-handed for the sake of it. This was a calculated response to a repeat offender who, frankly, was well aware of the consequences of being in the country illegally.
Right, indeed.
Sometimes it's just plain common sense.
True, although I do wonder, isn't there a risk that strict law enforcement like this can alienate certain segments of the public? I mean, while the actions may be legally sound, could the heavy enforcement show undesired public sensitivity and damage trust?
That's a valid, concern. But in situations like this, facts take precedence over emotion. The person in question ignored prior warnings multiple times and then provoked a necessary response from law enforcement.
Yeah, I see that. It really points to a broader issue. How do we balance strict law enforcement with a fair understanding of complex social dynamics?
Right, it's like walking a tightrope. On one end, you have the imperative to enforce the law to maintain order. On the other, there's a call for, sensitivity in execution. But in this incident, it seems the balance, or the, equilibrium, leaned towards what the law clearly prescribes.
Yep, definitely. And that brings us back to the core message. Laws are there for a reason. If someone's been warned repeatedly and then blatantly disregards those warnings, enforcing the law isn't just necessary, it's essential.
Absolutely. It boils down to accountability. Honestly, if you think you're above the law, you're setting a dangerous precedent.
True.
And then, in the public eye, the narrative gets twisted when emotions override cold, hard facts.
It's really like a clash of realities, one where legal procedures must be respected versus one where subjective interpretations and feelings can distort what's actually happening.
Perfectly put. And if we take one takeaway from this, it's that justice is not about headlines or dramatic gestures. It's about adhering to the rules that keep our society functioning.
Right on. Yeah, and if I might add, when you try to turn a lawful arrest into a spectacle, you not only invite legal consequences, but also undermine the credibility of whatever cause you claim to support.
Exactly. Imagine trying to defy a system at its most fundamental level. It's like, using a sledgehammer to crack a nut. Sure, you're making a statement, but you're also causing unnecessary chaos.
I get it. And that chaos in turn affects public trust in law enforcement. It's a cycle that just doesn't help anyone.
Right. And as we look at this incident, it's a reminder that respect for the law and clear legal procedures should be non-negotiable. Even if some individuals are quick to label authority actions as extreme, the facts remain. There's a lawful process in place here.
Yeah, exactly. So when we think about these kinds of events, the key is balancing robust legal enforcement with an informed, fact-based public dialogue.
Absolutely. It's about keeping our discussions rooted in reality rather than in sensationalism. And if you're out there protesting, maybe consider channeling that energy into an informed debate rather than trying to stage a real-life action movie.
Right, absolutely. Couldn't agree more. In the end, common sense should prevail, and if that means respecting the law, well, that's how we keep society functioning smoothly.
So, whether you agree or disagree with the method, the outcome is clear. Repeat offenders and lawbreakers aren't given a free pass, and meddling with law enforcement isn't just frowned upon, it's illegal.
Exactly. And to our listeners, let's remember, facts over emotions, rules over rhetoric. It's a tough balance, but it's the only way we uphold justice.
Precisely. In our world, respecting the law is not about stifling free speech. It's about ensuring safety and accountability for everyone. Without that, chaos is inevitable.
Thanks for this deep dive. It's always enlightening to sift through the layers behind these news stories.
Anytime. Let's keep the conversation going, stay curious, and remember to check the facts before rallying behind any headline.
Right on. Until next time, everyone, respect the process, respect the law, and maybe keep off the grass if you're planning your next big protest move.
Cheers to that.